Welcome to the Media Storm studio, where today we're joined by two very special guests.
I think you guys should introduce yourselves. Jess?
Jess. I'm Jess from Wales.
From Wales. Nathan?
I'm Nathan from Barnsley.
Nathan, you said on the show that Mathilda needs to hang out with more normal people. So by the end of this, I'd like to know whether I'm one of her normal friends or one of her not normal friends. You can let me know at the end.
Listen, believe me, I'll tell you if you're not.
We're going to start with the easy questions first, and just talk about the show a little bit. So first of all, Jess, what was the best part of the journey for you?
Probably coming to realise that I'm not scared of anyone anymore. I'm not scared of people. And at the end of it, probably making friends with the crew, Mathilda, Nathan. I don't know, it was a very wholesome experience in general, you know.
That's a really lovely answer. Nathan?
It's not going to. Is it going to be a lovely answer?
So I think it was just more like getting a better understanding how life works, if you know what I mean. So it was more like to see how other people live and how other people cope in their back gardens, if that makes sense. So obviously taking from me, I'm just used to my own comforts. So for me to do something so out of ordinary, it was more a challenge, and it was a challenge that I'm so glad I did.
Yeah. Mathilda, what about you?
I think for me the best thing was was meeting you guys. And it was also just like seeing how it gave me such faith in people, right? Because even people that you really, really disagree with are normally good people and don't think what we think for bad reasons or like hateful reasons. We always have good reasons. And then just seeing how how you reacted to everything and to everyone, and I just felt like it just gave me a lot of faith in people. It's just like people are just good, like, you know, people are good.
Cutie pie.
No, obviously I'm somebody who just watched the show. So I saw just the 4 hours of the show. So was there anything particularly funny or silly that happened behind the scenes? Something that we didn't get to hear on screen? I want to know. I need an exclusive for this recording, okay?
What about when we all got in the ship because Nathan like drank the bar dry?
Outed us in the hotel. Told the whole hotel that Channel 4 are here. And then we had to relocate. Oh my God. Stupid bloke.
So we had really, really strict confidentiality everywhere we went because there was so much security. So we were just arrived in Kenya and we were all like locked into this hotel because there was some, I don't know, security crisis happening that we weren't told anything. And so we just like discovered that no one was going to challenge us if we started ordering drinks. And then Nathan started getting pissed and like bragging to everyone.
Mathilda,
that we were
there's
Channel 4.
ordering drinks and there's ordering drinks like him.
No,
Who goes and does a
fair,
Disaronno shot in a Corona every single time till he gets to about 20 and then starts going, yeah, Channel 4 boys.
And then they had to move our hotel because then everyone knew.
Guys, let's give Nathan the right of reply, please.
So they said you can have a drink, right? So while the girls were having like the margarita shite that nobody drinks, I thought it's a free bar. I'm gonna go over the top, and no, I'm not being disrespectful when I say that. That air hostess was well worth a pump. So I thought to be saying, I'll say I'm on Channel 4 here. Maybe she, you know what I mean? Yeah. But she didn't. And I caused a security risk.
While he was trying to pick someone up, he breached security, the number one rule, and we had to move.
when I got really, really pissed off and walked off.
When didn't you? No, I'm
yeah.
joking.
That was that night when we hadn't eaten all day, and then someone got like veggie burgers, and you were really pissed off. They were veggie.
Oh yes.
The thing is, this was a real tough thing for the three of you to do. I mean, watching it, like I said, I only saw 4 hours of it, but watching it, it's pretty incredible. Some of the places you went to, some of the things you had to do, some of the things you saw, the hiking through the Alps all night, essentially. I mean,
sorry, just to interrupt you on that, but the Alps thing, right, on Channel 4,
Oh,
pissed
yes.
me right off.
There's one thing it
So-
didn't put in there was a rock that smashed into his back. And he generally, I remember it. I remember that, Nath.
No, it wasn't even that. They made me look like a right unfucking healthy bastard on there. And I thought, if you remember right, climbing the Alps, it were always bush route at back. But they put me at back all fucking time. I'm like, I'm thinking, I'm not even that bad.
I love that segue.
Well,
Yeah,
but
but the
that's
fact that-
interesting because Mathilda actually struggled at some points watching the show because obviously, as is the case with TV shows, the edited version is not exactly how it went down in real life. Apart from those kind of things, was there anything when you watched it that happened differently to how it was shown? Maybe Mathilda, you can start.
Yeah, okay. So they obviously delete almost everything. Like we were mic'd and filmed full time for nearly 5 weeks. There's so much in there. And they basically strip every conversation we have to like one-liners. Like Nathan, we were in Lampedusa. This is the one thing I asked, can you just please put this back in? And they were like, oh, it's too late. And it was like when you're like, oh, we can't help everyone, and was said a lot throughout the show and by Chloe as well, that we can't help everyone.
And that's referring to we can't help every
with
single
refugees,
refugee. We can't help. Okay.
So like, we can't help everyone, so what's the point? And that is said so much, and it just like annoys me that they didn't let me answer because no one's saying we can help everyone. It's just like either can we help more than we are currently helping. I think I said something like that. So sometimes I just found it difficult having things, how much was taken out.
And actually, Nathan, that was an argument that you made quite a lot on the show. We can't help everybody. Now, if someone said that to you, what would you think or feel?
You see, I'm very strong about this, and I'll say it how it is because if you watch show, I do anyway. It sounds awful. I don't really care about the adults. It's only the kids I'm more interested in. Now, make it safe and legal for kids 100%. Like, the kids don't know what they're running from. Kids don't know what they're fleeing from. Kids shouldn't be doing that. Nobody should be doing that, to be fair, the journey that they're doing. I'll admit that. But it's like, obviously, these kids, no kid should ever be born in this country scared, born in this world scared, and no kid should have to ever run from something. But it's like, I always say this now, if I looked at myself 4 weeks ago, I'd kick my own head in because of how ignorant I was, because I didn't know what were going off. Has it changed my views? I'd say 50%, yeah, because we still don't know the people are coming in. We don't know if they're good or bad, which we've seen there is good and bad. So obviously that needs addressing. But again, and I still say it now, and I agree with Mathilda what she says, but you just can't help everybody.
Yeah, you can't.
You can't.
You can't help everyone, but I guess no one's saying we should help everyone. That's the thing. Like no one is arguing we should help everyone. So it's kind of like a moot point.
I think, to be honest, the term "we can't help everyone," I think is the most stupid thing anyone can do, because that's the truth is, if you were to help the entire world, the whole world can't come to the UK. So why are we constantly repeating the same stupid sentence? The truth is, if we can help one person, that's enough. That's it.
Yeah.
Nathan, was seeing the kids the hardest part of the journey for you?
Yeah, so I've quite forgot a lot about this journey until I watched it back. I know it sounds stupid that I'm like amnesia or some shit, but it's like the kids I'll never ever forget. So the scene when we're at the train station, me, Jess, and Bushra, and then seeing them kids wet through after they've been chucked out of a boat, I'll never ever forget that, because it was like the most heartbreaking thing I've ever seen, because you could clearly tell mother was scared to death. But the kids were so happy, and they were running around, they were playing, even I was playing tag with them. And I'm like, they haven't got a clue. And it was just that moment in me, like, that just went like that in my head. I was thinking, I don't even know how to address this. For the first time in my life, I was speechless, and that takes summit, because for seeing wet kids that have run from like war-torn countries, or scared of famine, or scared of like sexual assault and stuff like that with the parents, and seeing them just not having a clue and being wet, that, honest to God, that'll be with me forever.
Wow.
And Jess, what was the hardest part of filming for you?
Probably listening to all the stories. You know, what a lot of people don't know is you only see 4 hours. You know, we were in these places for a long time, you know. Not so much listening to other people's stories as well. It's like listening to you, Mathilda. Like, I didn't know anything about immigration. And she was like a teacher. That's just not seen or like on there. It kind of looks like she's just this quiet person. But the truth is, me and Nath were asking her questions 24/7. Only because we know it's truth, what she says, you know. She's not going to make it up. And I learned so much on that journey. But for me, I think one memory that'll stay with me is probably James in episode 4.
Yeah, so tell us about James.
I've been in contact with James as well, Nath. I'll speak to you about that another time. But he's gone through way worse than we realised, you know. In the end of that scene where he says, you know, these people die, he's gone through way worse than that. I'm not going to go into depth of it. But just to see a man just standing there so vulnerable, do you know what I mean? And then I just remembered him the whole time I was home, you know. That's it.
Just for context, to make sure that people who haven't watched the documentary are able to follow along, where did you meet James? And so he's a refugee.
Yeah.
James was he was a refugee. He came from South Sudan, but you didn't meet him until Calais.
Yeah.
When he was trying to get to the UK.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah.
And he told you about like the boat journey he'd had where hundreds had drowned. And
Yeah. But yeah, that's not it. That to be honest, that was probably the last part of his journey that we heard. And there was way more horrific stuff that he'd gone through prior to getting here, you know. And like listening to what he said, like it's unbelievable, you know. But yeah, that stuck with me, you know, the realization that like there's me going, men are assholes 24/7, which to a degree I'll always think like I can't help it. It's imprinted in me. But then when you actually speak to them, no, far from the truth, you know. Far from it.
And Mathilda, what was the hardest part for you?
yeah, I mean, obviously, so much of what we encountered was so sad. But I guess I've been in refugee camps before, and also a lot of these stories, which are so awful, have happened to people I know or met, and so. Yes, was horrible, or so sad always. But for me, I think the thing that I found really difficult at the beginning was with you guys. I felt like we were just speaking. I was speaking a different language, right? Do you remember everything I said? You'd be like,
"Shut you down.
What the fuck you said? Like,
shut
what
up,
is that?
shut
What
up.
is that word?" Yeah. And I was trying to use like statistics and facts to challenge what you guys thought, and it wasn't, and I was wrong in thinking that it was about that you weren't thinking what you were thinking because you're like political, or you just base it on your life experience, and at the end of the day I wasn't going to change your minds with facts. Like, you guys were going to make up your own minds based on what you saw, and it wasn't about statistics. It was about like hearts and feelings and emotions and just being people and just respecting each other and listening to each other as people. And so at the beginning, yeah, I found it difficult because I just didn't know how to reach you guys.
Communicate.
And I was just overthinking, and that was a big lesson.
But hats off to you though, kid, because I turned around to you at the end and I was like, you, because obviously you've seen all shite that goes off over there anyway, like when you do your volunteering stuff. And is it volunteering stuff? Is that right?
So sometimes volunteering, sometimes work.
Well, whatever, I don't know, when you go over there and help anyway. And then, but what you did, I think it kind of happened after week 2. You were talking more me and Jess language, and you learned how to
adapt.
Treat us. Yeah, it's like we were learning how to adapt with what's going off, because it's not the norm, but you're used to it, seeing it, and you're used to hearing it. Like you've just said that you've listened to these stories, but because you've got me and Jess, and I'll admit this because you did well with me. I'm the most stubborn man on planet. And for you to then, because then you adapted how to talk to my language and how to talk to me, that's when we started to get on, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I always take my hats off
When
for
you
for that,
started to
kid.
swear, that was it.
This, you could really see that come across on the show. And honestly, I'm not just sucking up to you guys because you guys are here, because Mathilda will back me up when I said a few weeks ago, I said, Jess and Nathan are the stars of this show. Okay. She'll back me up. I'm not sucking up.
Yeah.
Okay. But the reason I want to say that is because before I watched the show, I had this idea that everybody who had, these strong anti-immigration views were just racist, or they were just Twitter trolls. I didn't see them as real people. And I actually learned from both of you guys, because I completely sympathized with your fears once I understood what they were and where they came from. And I want to go into both of them, but we'll start with Jess. You opening up about your negative experiences with men made me understand why then you would in turn fear having a lot of men living in your village. And what we wanted to ask you now, though, is do you think part of that fear was not just to do with men, but was also to do with a certain type of man?
No, just men.
Really? It was in do you think that you were more afraid of Somali men?
Oh yeah, I
at the
suppose
beginning
because of
than,
because you don't. When do you hear anything good about Somali men?
Yeah.
Please tell me anything in the media. When do you see anyone that's gone to uni that's a Somali? You don't. Do you know what I mean? And even if there are Somali doctors, they're not praised. It's if I'm only hearing negative things, that the only thing that Somali men do in the media is rape children, and do you know what I mean? And do all this. I'm going to believe it, and I. Well, I'm not going to believe it. It's just going to have that in me, isn't it? But no, I don't think like that anymore.
That must be such a difficult shift.
I'm not saying they're all
thinking.
good, because I'm not stupid either, but it's not nowhere near as bad as everyone makes out. Far from the truth.
Also, like Helena, I feel like you understated how affected you were by Jess's honesty. Not just you, but I know loads of people that that just so many people who, when you explained where that fear came from, I'm not, we're not going to talk about it or anything, or have you talk about it, but just that that was right, that was so powerful for so many people.
Yeah, you made me cry.
Yeah. I remember you were weeping basically.
But but that's what I mean when I say that I learnt from both of you, because I learnt to understand where people's fears come from, and that it's not a hate that's just, you're not born with that hate. I'd learned to understand where those fears come from, basically.
Yeah, and actually, something I really learned from your experience was in the context of migration, right? Because this is something I think about a lot, and I think about what are the solutions, or how do we actually help people. And one thing I learned from you is the way that, say, Westminster will force communities to take on disproportionate burden, working class communities to take on an unfair amount compared to what richer communities are taking on. So something I learned is, actually communities have to make the decision about themselves, right? If it would be great that Khanekli took in 200 refugees for a time, well, that would need to be something that you guys decided on for yourselves and worked out how to do it yourselves.
Yes.
Communities need to decide their own solutions, and actually distribution needs to be fairer, because in the same way that the richest countries in the world take way less than the poorest countries in the world, well, within those countries, the richest cities, the richest communities take way less than the poorest cities, the poorest communities, and that's really, really messed up. But hearing that from you was so important, because you explained it in a way that was really different to how I'd seen it in the media. Because when I saw what was happening in your town in the news, it was painted really differently. It was painted as a political struggle, and the far right was in, and they were saying stuff like "make Wales white again." How do you feel about how the story of your town was told in the news?
Disgusting. think it was so wrong. It was made out that we were all racist people, didn't want immigrants, and it was far from the truth, you know. We were like genuine people with genuine concerns. What people don't realise is that 95 people lost their jobs overnight, you know, mine included. That should be the headline. Do you know what I mean? That was the reason we stood up, because why? We didn't know why. You know, somebody gets sacked, there's a reason for it. And it was just overnight. And then next minute, we thought there was families coming in. Me and my mother were okay with families coming into the hotel. This is what people don't get. Then all of a sudden we heard men. And then we were just like, hang on. So 300 people now are going to be coming into a town of 400. What common sense? That is not common sense. There's 76 rooms in that hotel. And they were prepared to put 300 migrants in there. Now, how is that fair on them?
So then when
know?
when you know, like far right groups saw this was happening and they came into the town and they sort of like piggybacked on the protest, and a lot of them, they made it about race and
Well,
made it
they
about
succeeded.
migrants.
They succeeded because the problem we had is we were screaming to have ask the government for help. There was no help. You know, after 100 days, they're going to get people who are going to come in, and there's a lot of there was a lot of people then who were absolutely disgusting doing it, who bullied us to the point that I can't even go into it. But take that away. The truth was, the real people who sat there every day still continue to sit there with all this hate going on. And they were still knitting. That's what the people were doing there, knitting and singing Welsh songs. So, yeah, it was good and it was horrendous.
And Nathan, in the same way that I learnt from Jess, I learnt from your experiences of being a truck driver. You said many times on the show that if a refugee was found in your lorry, you would be fined £10,000 per refugee. And that is incredibly messed up because, as you said, it could completely ruin your livelihood, your whole life. And this is now what I've been taught is called the hostile environment policy, where the government makes normal people like Nathan responsible for policing migration and punishes normal people for it, which then obviously turns those people against refugees and against migrants. But Nathan, tell us about that problem. Is that a problem you still have to deal with? And would you still blame refugees, or do you think it's the policy that's wrong?
I mean, it's not just my problem. It's thousands of truck drivers that are coming through every day's problem, if you know what I mean. So it's one of my friends. He's actually just been recently caught with, I think he's had 9 in, and he's in court for £111,000 fine.
That's a scandal.
Wow.
See, it's just wrong that though, because that's not his fault. And at the end of the day, what does he do? Like, if one of my lads up at back doors, there were 9 in them, what? And they went, get out, and they went, no. What do you do? Do you know what I mean? You can't police it, and to be honest, it's like some of these truck drivers are all boys, so why would you expect them to police it? It's like I said on show, when do lorry drivers become border patrol? Do you know what I mean? And I think that's the reason why. Like, I know, and I must admit this, it's got to be a good 97% of the haulage drivers in this country that make that journey hate them. And it's not just that. The reason why they get so much hate around the people trying to cross is the means and ways of how they try and cross as well. So they will do anything that they're in their power to stop that lorry. Like, and I've seen it firsthand with trucks completely smashed to bits. So what they'll do is they'll throw a brick through a windscreen if they don't stop, because they're that desperate to do the crossing, and it's one of the easier routes because it's not as policed as much to do it. So that's the reason why it's not the policies, and it is the governments that are like, oh, it's your problem, oh, it's not, it's our problem, oh, we'll blame lorry drivers.
So yeah, for me, so why I blame government is because I know among the people desperate to cross, there are really good people who have literally no other way to cross and whom it is a like life or death situation. And often the person who they're putting most at risk, I mean, always is themselves when they are smuggling onto these lorries. Every time they're risking death. And, you know, even when I was there were a lot of men who were killed trying to get onto the lorries. But I also think it's completely like fucked up that you guys would be penalised for that. And for me, it is cruel of a government that creates no legal and safe routes for almost any refugees. Like at the moment, I think it's only if you're Ukrainian or from Hong Kong, then penalising not just the people doing the dangerous and illegal journeys, but also like the truckers doing that. Because, like another way the government does this is if you work at a refuge for like domestic abuse, if you work at a domestic abuse refuge and a woman comes and needs refuge, the government has said you now have to check their migration status, because if you let them in, if you give them safety, if you take them off the street and they don't have proper papers, they're illegal, then you can be penalised. And so they are trying to make people who work in domestic abuse refuges, who are probably really, really compassionate people, say no and turn a woman out. And so that is just like another example of the same policy that they're using to fine truckers. So for me, the baddie in the story, is the government.
But Nathan, there was a very powerful moment on the show where you spoke to another truck driver. And by that point, your views had changed. But the truck driver you were speaking to still had the views that you had at the beginning of the show. Can you tell us about having that conversation?
Yeah, so Big John, love him, right? I've actually spoke to him after the show. He had it on Facebook. Yeah. And I was talking to him literally about 4 days ago, funny enough. And I was saying, he goes, I get everything that you're saying, but I'm still sat on fence with you. He goes, because I was talking to him like as I'd have been talking to him when I first started. Like, oh, bollocks, not met a good one, da-da-da-da. And I was like, there is good in there. There's a lot of bad. I'll never deny that. And we can all say that. There is a lot of bad. But there's still a lot of bad in this country. I'm not saying everybody's bad.
I think it's more good than bad with everyone.
It's like, I mean, even if they're from England and they're born in England and they're bad, I'd get rid of them straight away. It don't bother me at all. But talking to him, and he was like, it was just like watching me, and it was like a so surreal moment. They were like, I think that's what I said to him. I'm like, I ain't got media in me here. I ain't got the news. I ain't got Facebook. I've just watched it from my eyes, and it's helped me so much to understand it more for the people that are absolutely desperate for it and just want a better life. And I sat there, and I remember one night just being laid in bed thinking, I couldn't live like this. I'd be off. Like, there's no way on God's green earth I could ever live like this. And I wouldn't expect my family to live like this.
Nath, when you said that, that I just thought said so much. Because, to be honest, the whole reason, right, that Helena and I set up this podcast is because we were sick of working for these news organisations, working for mainstream news organisations, and just seeing how much bullshit there is. Like, their priority is to make money, and so they will write the most extreme, scary headline version of a story, version of reality, because it's going to get them loads of clicks. And for me, having come from working like in the camps and knowing refugees and what they've been through, to going to a news outlet that was telling the story in a way that just was so different to how it felt, I couldn't deal with it. And that's why we ended up doing this. Would you guys, now that you've seen what it looks like, do you think that what you read about or see about in the media is accurate?
No, I don't believe anything. Nothing. I genuinely know.
Propaganda.
Every single headline is like the opposite of what it means in my eyes. Everything.
It's like you make your own judgments, don't you? If I like somebody don't like, if I don't like somebody, I've made a judgment on that. And it's like I always say, somebody like watching the show, because I've got quite a lot of hate from this. So I always say to people now, you've got 2 ears and one mouth.
Oh, God.
You should listen twice as hard as you could speak. So just...
I hate it when he says that. I'm like, oh, who's he going to say this to next now? Christ.
It is true, though.
That's bloody saying, honestly, when you say that. Yeah, I know.
Most people, or most organisations have an agenda, whereas we didn't. Like, when we saw each other... we didn't have an agenda. None of us were making money off so we just interacted with each other normally. And it's so different to buying a paper or like listening to a politician when everything they say it for a reason.
And another thing which I think people don't know is that we actually weren't allowed to have our mobile phones when we went away.
I couldn't believe how much I was glued to my phone
Yeah.
until I did that. It was mental. Like, when I first got my phone back, because I left a day earlier than you, didn't I? Because I didn't want to stay another day.
Yes.
And because I couldn't be arsed with it. And I turned my phone on, and it just crashed. And I was like, the fuck? I think it was something ridiculous, like 1,300 text messages that I had to go through. And I was like, shit, how much do I use my phone?
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't believe it. Do you know what the funny thing about this whole journey and all is? And it makes me laugh this. When I did the journey, because we went radio silent, we didn't put out on social media or anything like that. Did people not ask you where you were?
Yeah, I put out a notice. I didn't realize sort of how cryptic or like ominous it sounded, but I basically just like put out a notice saying I'm not going to be in contact for 5 weeks. I got quite a lot of people sent me theories. Some people thought I was doing like Love Island or something. I was like,
Do you know what people thought I was? In prison. I'm not even joking yet. I had so many messages saying, "Oh, you've been released now." I'm in prison. There was a massive rumour going round that I read Nick, and I couldn't stop laughing.
You were in the prison of me and Jess.
Yeah.
I'd rather do fucking time than that. Jesus Christ.
Listen, it's so sweet to see your guys' friendship now. It really is. So I want to ask you, what was your first impression of Mathilda?
No.
And what is your impression of her now? Jess, you go.
So when I first met Mathilda, second was good. Because I just remember, because we were all in the same position, nervous. I turned round and I looked at her and she smiled, and that was it. I didn't know what team she was on, left, right. I didn't know if she was racist or whatever at that point. We just saw each other. And then I think, I don't know, maybe the first like hour, I knew. I was like, oh my God, here we go. Here we go.
But so you're like, oh, here we go. Like,
What
she's gonna.
I don't know, here we go. We got a
anyway.
proper lefty on our hands, you know. Somebody's here to dictate, tell us what to do. Nah. But no, it wasn't, you know. Judged.
You didn't feel judged.
No, I judged her.
You thought I was gonna like tell you were like
What to do.
what you should think,
How I should think and how I should feel, you know. But no, far from the truth.
Oh. And Nathan?
Well,
Oh God,
I'm looking forward to this.
I want to go deaf right now.
so we were on Whitecliff Sedova, weren't we? Now, I was the last one to walk round, weren't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I can remember seeing, because I didn't know who or who, and all I remember seeing is this big, stupid pink suitcase thing, right? and this is all about Mathilda. And I looked, and you got your curly hair thing that you have, and then you had like the Aladdin style trousers, and I thought, oh, she's gonna shag all trees here, isn't she? I thought, there's no way on God's green earth that me and her are gonna get on. And then you spoke, and you're so well spoken, and I thought, no, it's never gonna fucking happen. This, like, we're gonna argue so much, because I know what I'm like. I'm as blunt as fuck, and I thought, I might be a bit too much for you. So I curved it back a bit. And then I got to know you. And I swear to God, I love you with me all my heart now. And I've told you this. If you ever need anything, I will be on that car. And I'll be straight down M1 and I'll come and sort it for you. You are like one of the Earth's nice people. And don't get me wrong, you're a knob. And I'll admit that all day long. And you are.
God, is it?
Can't say
You are.
anything.
I knew he couldn't just remain nice.
He had to add the knob in.
He's Garu, yeah.
I was just about to tear up before the knob part.
Yeah, same.
It's like I said, I think I put it on Instagram. It was a moment when we were in Lampedusa and you got really upset. And you know, when we were at the graveyard.
Yeah,
and
well,
it
this
was
wasn't
tearing.
in the scene, but we
No.
went to a graveyard and it was full of unmarked graves of unidentified refugees who drowned at sea. So I found, that even like
And
now,
I think-
found that really hard.
I think it was that moment because I can remember just looking at you and you were just so upset, and it were getting to me because I think I had a tear at that point, and I thought I just put my arm around you and I was like, we're all just humans here. Do you know what I mean? Like, we come from worlds apart. I mean, like the day before we just had the argument on beach, but we're sharing the same emotions, so we can't be that much different. Like, even though we are chalk and cheese to so much extent. It was at that moment I thought, I need to be there now, and I just give you a hug, and it was like one of them things I'll just never forget either.
Yeah, I really needed that hug. It was a good hug.
That's really lovely. And now I have to ask, Mathilda, what was your first impression of Jess and Nathan, and what do you feel now?
So I always like see the good in people, and when the first day we just got to meet everyone, but for like 1 minute before we split into our two groups. And if I'm being totally honest, I don't want to give anyone shade, but I'm going to be 100% honest. I saw you two, and I saw Dave, and I saw immediately that you didn't come from bad places, even if I disagreed with you. I actually saw like good people with feelings, good people, compassionate people who were going to be real, and who were going to just like who didn't think their minds were going to change, but were going to take what happened at face value. I saw like how different we were in so many ways, but I also saw that you guys were funny and you guys were warm, and I thought I am not going to hate this. It's going to be difficult, like, because we are going to be arguing a lot, but I am not going to hate this. I'm not going to hate being with you guys at all. And I didn't. No, I loved it. I love you guys. It's really nice to hang out now.
Mm-hmm.
She's a soppy bastard.
Yeah. I mean, I think really the whole point of this episode is to show that we don't have to be so polarized. We need to apply the lessons learned from this documentary to our lives. We need to fight dehumanization of refugees and migrants and people who are other. And we need to talk to people, not shout at them.
Yes.
And we need to unite together against the people who are really making life difficult for everybody.
And actually, because I think like a lot of the people who listen to this podcast probably are on the left or would identify as on the left, and it is a massive problem often the way that people on the left try and push messages. Maybe if I served any value on the journey for you, like in the same way you did for me, it's rather just by listening and understanding where you're coming from and thinking, okay, you have this problem, I have this problem, like how can we solve our problems together?
But I do have a question for both of you, which is now if you're ever with somebody, whether it's family member, friend, or just general person, and they have very strong anti-immigration or anti-migration or anti-refugee views, what are those conversations like now?
It depends on the conversation. At the moment, a lot of them I have to walk away from because I just can't deal with it. You know, I'm in a town where it's a little bit different. So some of the conversations I can't have with people, and some people won't understand. And that's all right. That's absolutely fine. But yeah, for me, it's hard.
So, with me, it's a bit. I've had it quite a lot. So obviously I drive taxis as well. And Barnsley's not that big. So as soon as I pull up, people jump in and they're like, "Oh my God, you've been on that show." And I'm like, "Yeah, haha." And they go, I fucking don't agree with it and this, that, other. So then what I do is I try and explain to them why they're doing it. But if I always think this now, if they're turning around and saying, "Nah, fuck them, this, that, other," I'm not going to argue with you because you're not ready to understand it. And I think that it happened to me at the right time where, because I knew I was not sure, I knew I had to be open-minded and I knew I had to listen. So when you're arguing with somebody now that's set in the stone, they ain't gonna change their mind no matter what I say, no matter what. So they're not ready to understand it. So what's the point in arguing? I just go, "Yeah, it's your opinion, mate."
Yeah,
Just,
it's like if they've watched the whole show and they've still got them. Did you see my point? That's my point. If you can watch the entire show and you have an opinion at the end, I'm not going to change that now because I haven't been able to change it throughout the show. What am I going to start now? There's no point. So
welcome to my lifelong mission.
yeah.
We butted heads a few times, but we got on it eventually, didn't we? Like, we got there in the end.
We got there
I
in
won't
the
change
end.
it though, because at the end of the day, I think it's like, because me and everybody, like me, you and Jess, me and you are the polar opposites. It's 100%. nailed on. We are polar opposites, and to show that by 4 weeks together we can still chill out and we can still have a drink and we can still have a laugh, and everybody's human.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You've got your opinions, I've got my opinions. But when we were talking, like when we meet up, like so, for instance, when we went down to premiere, and to be honest, I was so drunk at that premiere, by the way. But we just sat and held hands all the way through that show.
Yeah.
That's a moment I'll never forget.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember watching the show. I think I fell asleep like 3 times in it. But I can always remember just holding your hand, and I was like, me and you have come so far in this little journey. I know it's about immigration and stuff, but it's more than just immigration, because it's taking, like we were saying, 6 people with so many different opinions and so many different lives. And number one, like, I thought, oh, fucking hell, we're going to argue like fuck here all the time, and I ain't got time for that, because I just call people a cunt. But it just shows that, like, you understood me and I understood you. And I'll never not appreciate that. You know what I mean? Never in a million years.
Same.
Well, on that note, I'm afraid we have to wrap up. But I just want to say, Jess and Nathan, thank you so much for joining us. We
thank
always
you.
ask our guests if there's anything else they'd like to say or anything else they'd like to plug. So we'll start with Jess first.
Yeah, I'd very much like to say I am single. I am single. I've got nobody coming in my inbox. Single. There we go. That's it.
DM Jess if you are a lesbian.
Yeah.
Lesbians only.
Any lesbians out there?
And Nathan?
So, I've just started up my new HGV driving school. So that lands on 2nd of May. So if you need a lorry license,
There's your man.
Oh, amazing.